I love it. Hey guys, this is Amanda with the Roanoke Regional Small Business Development Center, and I have Heather here with me. Hey
Hey.
Heather. And then our guest today for Casual Friday, I'm so excited about this. I won't spend too much time on this, but you guys that know me, and I know a lot of you watch this that are my friends, my background is in commercial design and designing commercial spaces for businesses, law firms, restaurants, hotels, all the fun stuff. And my passion is actually offices. I know that sounds really boring, but it's really, quite frankly, the most fun, and you have to get the most creative with it. So I'm excited today to introduce you to Stephen Pendergrass. He's a great friend of ours at the Roanoke Regional Small Business Development Center and supports our work. So thanks to him, we're able to offer free advising to small businesses. So thank you, Stephen, for that. But it's Stephen Pendergrass. He's the vice president for Poe Cronk Real Estate Group and offers commercial leasing and real estate sales across the region. And he is a wealth of knowledge and resource for us. Thank you, Stephen, for joining us.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. If you guys haven't met Stephen, you need to do that. Hook yourself up with him if you need an agent. He's so much fun and just a wealth of knowledge, which you're going to see today. And I hope this is going to be really helpful for you, whether you currently lease or own space, you're looking to lease or own space or want to expand, or just kind of reconsidering your space options, especially now in light of COVID-19. A lot is changing and we're questioning everything. And Stephen actually has some resources he's going to share with us. But let's just get started. So this is Casual Friday, super casual conversation over coffee. I've got my coffee. I hope you guys do too. And I want to start, if we can, first talking about the commercial real estate market, because we know that so much has changed with COVID-19 and we don't know where we're going. Can we talk a little bit about the impact on that, especially with you and your clients?
Sure. What we're seeing was kind of, let me start with pre-COVID. Things were booming. Things were just happening. It was a pretty exciting time. People were looking, people were expanding. Everybody had a really positive outlook generally to the future. And then COVID happened, and everyone I know, probably people we know, had to start working from home. Weren't allowed in the office. Weren't allowed to go shopping in some regards, and it changed everybody's life, especially when it comes to work. And it was kind of like you hit pause on a lot of things. We didn't see a lot of things, just new deals, new expansions completely die. It was just that they were paused, and then they started moving really slow. A lot of the things we had been working on with clients for, these things can take 60, 90, 180 days from the beginning of a negotiation to actually getting the deal or the client in the space. These turn times took even longer. Personally, we still had several clients move forward with their plans for expansion. I had a couple that are still paused. I had one post-COVID, after phase 2, that had an internal policy within their company, say they had to stop expansion. So, what we're seeing in the market, I think, wasn't great, and it got better because there was kind of like a new normal, we'll call it. You hear that a lot, and I think that people are just still worried about how to move forward because there's a lot of things outside of their control. I also think a lot of businesses know that they have to continue forward, and the lessons that they learned in March and April, March and April gave them an idea. They had to come up with some creative ideas about how to move forward once the crisis sort of began to wane. And then once they put those policies into effect, they had to continually tweak them. And now they're having to tweak them some more. But we're still seeing some growth. It's not what it was, but I feel like that's something that a lot of businesses, especially local small businesses, they have to continue moving forward. They don't really have any other option. And, speaking personally, that's just, that's the way I feel too. I mean, we've got to keep trudging forward, finding new ways to deal with these new obstacles. And I think we're slowly but surely moving through it.
I love that. So, I know you guys deal with a lot of large businesses and small businesses. Have people abandoned their spaces? Have you been seeing that? Like where they're like, we are closing, or we can't, they're wanting out of their lease, or like what is that looking like right now? I'm really curious about that. We obviously work with a lot of small businesses that are grappling with some of those decisions.
I think some businesses that may have been struggling before pre-COVID are kind of withering on the vine right now.
Yeah.
What I've seen a ton of has been tenant clients and landlord reps, or landlords that I rep, are dealing with deferments and abatements on rent. So what has happened is, if you're a retailer, or you're, or an office user, but retail especially has been hit. What a lot of these guys have done, they've gone out and they may have gotten PPP loans, they may have not, they may have gotten the IDL or something to continue paying their bills, but they have asked a lot of landlords to help them out with a deferment. So they might say, all right, well, for May, June, and July, we would, respectfully ask to pay for 50% off of our rent for these 3 months, and we'll pay it back this way, however it may be. Or we want May and June, July, whatever, rent free. And then the landlord has always, all my landlords have been great to work with. They'll say, all right, well then, if that's the case, we will work with you. We will take the 2 months that you didn't pay and we'll put it on the back end of the lease term.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. That's a great idea.
And I have, I've actually had really good luck on both sides of that. I think, I get the feeling that, most of the people that I deal with brought it together. They realize that.
Yeah.
And, so everything's been worked out. Now, that's why I say at this point, we have all got to basically keep working and trudging through this thing because we don't have any other option. That's right. So we're all in it together. We got to figure out solutions together.
That brings up two good points I just want to mention here. One is, if you're a small business and you're in that position, we're still knowing and understanding that a lot of people still, they haven't heard about the Paycheck Protection Program loans or the the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. If you're listening to this and watching and you're struggling with rent payments, lease payments, or even payments on a space that you own, seek us out. We can help you get those funds and talk through the financial part of that with you, because there are options to help you keep your lease in place. And so we'd be glad to help you with that. And I just wanted to mention that. But Stephen also wanted to, oh my gosh, I lost my thought. There were so many thoughts in there, what you were saying. I wanted to start. Do you have anything else to add, first of all, to the current market? And if not, I want to pivot into kind of looking for commercial space right now.
I would say, and this will kind of play into the other thing, I think that there is still space for retail, office users, industrial, flex space, whatever. And there is an appetite from a lot of these landlords to get their spaces leased. So now is a good time to go after space and maybe get some incentives. These landlords are incentivizing a lot of these spaces now. So it's actually a really good time if you do want to find a new space or if you want to expand to start negotiating. Because you've got a lot of landlords with that are eager to get their spaces leased, and they're willing to give maybe some free rent or some sort of give here, give there, give some kind of incentives. So it's a good time to start looking because of that.
That's really great advice, because I have to be honest, and not to make light of it, so many of the businesses that we work with are struggling and are incredibly challenged right now. But we also have about 50% of our clients who are starting businesses, expanding businesses, growing. A lot of times out of disaster comes innovation, right? So we are seeing a ton of that right now, actually more so than the other side, which is encouraging for us, but we certainly also don't want to make light of those who are challenged, because we know that that's big work ahead of us. But if you're in that space where you're wanting to expand or open, I love that that's a great reminder to people. Now is the time to look. I know in my businesses, when I've always rented on the outskirts of like development, so that I got really great deals and development came my way and increased my property value, yet I'm paying very little for it. That was always my secret. If anybody wanted to know how we had such great spaces, it was always, get on the like not quite developed part of town and let things move towards you. But it was always in those cases, those landlords and building owners and developers always wanted to put incentives in place because they needed to get their first tenant in there, right? So that's a super good reminder. That leads me into a pivot. One thing that you said earlier that I wanted to make sure we capture, because it's, timing when you're starting or you're looking for a new space, a lot of people don't understand the timing around that. And you said earlier, it can take up to 160 to 180 days potentially to close a deal. I'd imagine, especially if you're looking at build out, which I've done a lot of.
Specifically, that really stretches out those turn times.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even 180 days would be pretty good turnaround time if you're talking about even just build out design. So that brings me to, and you've got to have a few months if you're starting to look for space. Like, you want to give yourself that time. It's not, I'm going to open next month, let's start looking for space, right? Like, there's a time of negotiation and really turning that deal around.
You're really not doing yourself any favors if you don't give yourself enough time, because if you're in a crunch, you're not going to be able to search probably enough, and you're going to hurt yourself on negotiations too, because if you're rushing to get something done, you might lose a little bit of that edge, that leverage. Then it gives a leverage to the other side. If you've got to get the space next week, you're going to take what they give you.
That's right.
Sure. Yeah.
And I guess there's different sides of this, and people think differently about it, but location's important. I was in a business where, we were taught in the beginning of it that you're a destination business, so it doesn't matter where you are. When in reality, it really mattered. It mattered and was make or break. And oftentimes that is the case. Not so much maybe for someone that doesn't have any customer facing interactions, but even for your employees, right? Space is so critical to our productivity, the way that we function in a space, the ideas that we're able to generate, all of that matters. And so I want to ask a couple questions, and I know you have a lot of tips for people, but let me just ask a few things. As a leasing agent, or if you're looking to help someone buy some commercial property, can you help them with those conversations about location, like what's best for their business? Is that something that you get involved in?
I can, yeah, no, absolutely. We can, yes. A lot of that depends on, like you said, is it something where if you're a destination, can you go to another part of town that is, you think might be up and coming in a couple of years, go there first.
Right.
If you're a retailer and you're selling, a certain product that is great, that you're trying to appeal to like the farmer's market crowd on Saturday mornings in downtown Roanoke, that ain't gonna work for you. You're gonna want to be down close to the foot traffic,
right,
or a high foot traffic area.
Right.
So yeah, you got to tailor it to what you're doing, what you're selling, and really where you want to be. What kind of environment do you want?
I feel like a lot of people need thinking partners for that. A lot of times we're driven, especially when we're looking for new space, whether we're starting a business or expanding, our money is on the mind. Our mind is on the money, and we're not always thinking very clearly about, what does that look like 5 years from now, right? Like, we're only thinking about tomorrow and I got to get this going. So I think having that thinking partner is really important, to have those conversations around location and what do you really need and what's your product and what's your goal. I love the concept. Here's my next question, then I'm going to let you have the stage with tips. A topic that I talk a lot to clients about, because I feel like in this area, and this is just my limited experience with our client base, there's a lot of competitiveness and not a lot of collaboration between businesses. And I come from the collaboration. Collaboration is everything, and it can increase your market stance. It can save you a ton of money by collaborating with others. But I love, there's certainly a new market concept. And when I say that, like really in the last 5 years, so not brand new, where like businesses do better if they're around like businesses, right? So in like pockets. So we have a few of those in the Roanoke and Allegheny and New York Valley kind of region. I know that we have some pockets like that. But how important, like with the customers and the clients that you're working with, how important, have you seen that be part of the conversation where you might have to encourage them to do that, or are people coming to you looking for that?
That is important. You have to have a certain synergy. That's why you have a lot of office parks. And that's why you have the downtown retail area, like I said, around the market, because they you might have the same type of product, but you're the type of business, but you may offer different products and do benefit from one another, because ultimately the more businesses that need foot traffic are all in the same area, the more foot traffic you're going to get. And they're all going to feed off each other. And then you have office parks that have a similar effect that they may share clients, but have, like I said, maybe they would offer similar products, but not all the same. So they feed off one another.
Yeah.
They help one another succeed and grow. So yeah, no, there's definitely need to have a synergy there.
I love a good example of that for you guys who are watching. There's great examples of this in the New York Valley too, especially with downtown Blacksburg. But in Roanoke, there is a Piccadilly Square. I always think about, like, that is such a great synergistic little, I don't even know what that's called. There's probably a term for that. It's not a park, but, place where the buildings are together. And those businesses, they don't offer the same products, but they serve the same customers, the same customer profile, which is, it makes for great lease space because you can charge more for the lease space when you have that as a plus, but it's also so great for the businesses who can kind of bounce off each other. Okay, so enough of my craziness. I could ask you questions for hours, but I know that you have some tips for people who are looking for commercial space. And so I want to give you the floor and let you talk about those and other things that you think would be super helpful for people.
Well, I put together a little outline, just a free flow thinking outline, which I'll send to you guys to share with people. But it's kind of like, where do you start if you're a new business or an existing business? Best place to start, the things you need to consider when you're searching for space. And you need to understand what type of service you provide. What are you offering customers and clients? And you need to think about your employees. How many current employees do you have? And how many employees do you think you may hire, or what your expansion plans are for employees over the next 12 to 36 months? Because, you may need more space. You might want to get an office or a retail site that is expandable, where you can expand into. Big thing is, what's your budget? How much rent can you pay? There are a lot of things to look at rent. It's not just base rent. A lot of times you'll pay a rent, and this is a whole other thing we can talk about, the ways you pay rent. You can pay a base rent, and on top of that, you might have to pay certain operating expenses back to the landlord. So you have a rent, and then you pay for taxes and insurance space, or a fee to keep the lights on in the parking lot that is shared between you and other tenants. That's called a common area maintenance fee. So there are a lot of things that go into the rent. So you need to understand all that before you sign a lease, obviously. And that's one reason the negotiation period might take 30 to 60 days just for a space that you take as is, because you're not only negotiating your rent, you're negotiating all these other aspects. And there's a lot of things you got to consider. And then the location is the next biggest thing. What location best suits your business? What type of business do you have? Where do you want to be? Are you a place that can go out to what everybody thinks might be an up and coming area, like let's say Wasena. You've seen what's happened in Wasena. That little area was just derelict for a long time, and now it's full of thriving little small businesses.
Right.
I think they probably got pretty good rent right now, and that's gonna 5 years from now that'll probably change a little bit as you see things continue to transition over there. Location also, how convenient is it for your employees to access if you and all your employees live in Botetourt County, do you want to drive all the way to the other side of town, Roanoke, to Wasena to operate your business, and how convenient it is to your customers? What we're looking at now, how important is collaboration to your work environment? You need an open office plan where everybody kind of collaborates and goes back and forth and talks, or do you need more closed offices for privacy? And are you customer client facing? What kind of retail element do you have in your business? Those are the 6 or 7 of the main things you got to consider. There are a lot of other things, but I'll send this to you guys so you'll have it distributed.
Yeah, we'd love to share that with folks so that you have it. And I got a couple questions around what you just said. What is the typical lease term that you're seeing right now? Is it 3 years, 5 years? Like I know it can be anything, but what are you seeing happening right now?
It's generally 3 to 5. A tenant's going to get more favorable terms on a 5-year deal. So the longer the term, the better the rent's going to be for you. The more flexibility you're going to have when you negotiate. Shorter terms generally lead to less flexibility with a landlord and a higher rent.
Yeah.
And not everybody can do that, but generally, 3 to 5 is a sweet spot.
Okay.
So I want our businesses to understand, because you had talked about, like, you've got to know, like, are you going to grow? Like, how much space do you need? You've got to think about that 3 to 5 years, right? Because that's how long you're going to be in your space, and you don't want to, and I've been in these situations, and they're just not fun. It's not that they're not doable, but you don't want to be, 2 years in a situation, and have to negotiate for expansion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or reduction, but both of those. I moved my business 4 times in 3 years. It is not fun. Like, just get the space from the get-go, right? Like, get it, and understand what that's going to look like. The other thing you talked about, like, all of these, rent terms. I would love to do a separate workshop one day on lease negotiations, because there's just so much there. And you and I have talked about that, Stephen, and maybe we can make that happen kind of as a follow-up to this later this year. But all of I can't tell you how many leases I've looked at, and we've even looked at with clients. There's a lot to think about. Is that something as an agent that you help with? If I come to you and say, Stephen, I'm looking for space, are you going to work with me to help me negotiate those terms?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You've got to know the market to understand what the market rents are, to know if you're getting a good deal or not. And you've got to do the deals in order to understand the market. And then you've also got to be very thorough, like I said, when you're looking through the expenses, what's called a pass-through. What's the landlord passing through to you? Some things are non-negotiable, some of them are, and you want to make sure that the information you're getting, you got to fact check it, make sure it's accurate.
And understand it, because I tell you, I've been in this industry for a long time, but even with my businesses, when I was negotiating space, I don't know that, I would have these terms, and I had an agent who was amazing too. And I would agree to these things, right? Like, thinking, oh, my monthly rent is just amazing. This is awesome. And then that yearly bill comes that I agreed to for taxes or whatever. And I'm like, I can't breathe. And so it's super important to take that in consideration. And you mentioned that in your conversations, like, it's not just about the monthly rent. It's like, you've got to make sure, if you're agreeing to insurance, taxes, or any of those type of things that are going to be added on, obviously the common area maintenance fee and things like that, you've got to make sure when that bill comes around that you can pay it. It's typically, and sometimes it is and sometimes it's not. A lot of times you get the bill and it's due, It's
Mhm.
not like, oh, this is included in the next 12 months payments. It's like, that $5,000 is due now.
And, it's always in the lease. If it's not in the lease, if it's not in writing, you ain't got to do it generally, So it's in the lease. You just got to make sure you read the fine print and you understand it. And if it's not, and let's say if it's not the way you want it to be, everything's negotiable for the tenant and the landlord. Everything's negotiable. And then you can work through it somehow. But if you don't understand it going in and you get that big bill for the taxes and you got to pay it in the next week, that can, especially if you're a small business, that can hurt you. So you got to know that going well in advance. Well, before you sign the lease, you did have that figured out.
Right. And run it with your numbers. Like I remember when I did, I thought, oh, that's nothing. I'm not worried about that. But then, you're looking at your cash flow and you're like, oh, like, yeah, I can pay it, but that hurts. But I wasn't thinking that at the time. I was just thinking, that's fine. I'll pay it. I got it. Which it all turned out fine, but it's just so important to think about those things through. And I love that you're available. And I think that's the important part of having an agent or a broker that's working with you. Because those leases are, they get confusing, incredibly confusing. And you need to know that you can negotiate, which is critical. So I also wanted to ask, I don't know that you mentioned this, but we were talking about before we started recording, the average space per employee used to be like 300 square feet, I think you said.
Yeah, it was about.
And now it's closer to 75 square feet.
That's right. That's what it has been. And a lot of that, you're trying to put more people into a smaller space to save rent.
Yeah.
And, let's say in the 80s, 90s, everybody had their own office. It was about 300 square feet. And then you see people starting to get moved into cubes, which were 10 by 10 and then 8 by 8 and then 6 by 6. And that doesn't really work right now with social distancing. And I feel like you're going to have what is called a de-densification, where you're going to see people work from home that just stay at home, that can continue to work from home. And that extra space that you might have in an office will be available for other people to expand their workstations, their workspace. What you're seeing in a lot of businesses right now is it's like an A-B work environment, where if you have cubes, you got the A crew and the B crew. A crew will come in Mondays and Wednesdays, and then they'll be in these cubes, and the B crew will come in Tuesdays and Thursdays. So you've always got a cube or a station between the other two that are working, and then everybody's off Friday. We see that I'm in the Wells Fargo Tower, and it's about half empty on Fridays because a lot of people are working from home, and it's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's a good way to deal with it, and that's part of it goes back to what I was talking about with people that they have an idea in March and April how it's going to work, and they try to implement it, and they're constantly tweaking it, and that's kind of what you're seeing now with workstations. So let me see.
That's fascinating. Can you had some data? We'll wrap up this. I know we're running a little at 10:30, and I know we want to get people off of here. But tell me, you were telling us about data that you had. You've got some survey data on because we're curious about remote working, right? Like in our offices at the Small Business Development Center across Virginia, not just here in the Roanoke region and New River Valley, but we're not in the offices and we're not seeing clients face to face. That will be the case for the foreseeable future. And we're actually far more productive not in the office, quite frankly. We have great communication systems. We use Microsoft Teams, and we actually are connected better now than we were when we were in our various offices. And so we love remote work. It's effective for our clients. We can see far more clients this way, which is incredible for us and them. But you've got some trends that you're seeing. It sounds like that's not the case for most people. They want to be back in the office.
Yeah, let me run through a few of these for you. Based on a survey of 5,000 different clients nationwide that a company did, 12% went to work 4+ days from home post-pandemic. So only 12% actually want to do it.
Wow.
Another survey based on 65,000 clients said 89% of respondents believe that physical office space remains a necessity for companies to operate successfully, but the office is going to have to change the environment. And another third statistic or survey was from 3,000 clients says that 58% of office workers miss the office. Sentiment expressed by an even larger percentage than those 35 and under. So people that are under 35 really want to get back to work.
Yeah. We're definitely seeing that too, for sure, that just the ability to be around other people and share experiences and collaborate, I think I know it's something that we miss big time. That's cool. It's always fascinating to me what people are thinking and how our experiences are different, and whether we want to be back in the workplace or not. My favorite of what you just said, or the most curious, is the 89% that want to return, but things have to change in the office. And I think that's critical for whether you've got a small business or a big business, to really start communicating with your staff around what they're comfortable with. And this is just my personal take on this: be respectful of that, right? Don't demean concern in any way. And I see that happening a lot right now, where employers and especially in the small business industry, aren't being very nice about it, and there's two sides. You're worried about, like, are people taking advantage of you? But there also is great concern out there. And I think being able to understand that and not demean it is important. And then figure out what you need to do in communication with your employees, what needs to happen in the office for them to feel comfortable to come back and get to work like they want to do, right? So that 89%, that's a big number. And that was out of 65,000, I think you said, people?
Yeah, that was the 65,000 respondents.
That is really cool. That's good data. Okay, so I told you before this started, I could just talk to you forever about this. I love this topic, and we could just go on and on and on. But I wanted to, I don't know if Yvonne's still on the line with us, but Deb, do you have any questions for Stephen that you want answered before we hop off here?
No, not really.
I really appreciate you being here and listening in.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And it sounds like we need to get a workshop on the table for lease negotiations, which I think you and I were scheduled to do a little bit of in April, and we had to cancel that event. So we'll try to get back on that and do something virtually, because I think it's an important piece of the puzzle that is a very stressful part of the puzzle for especially new businesses. If you've never done a space before, or you're expanding into a space from home, super stressful. So we'll be in touch about that and get that on the books. And before we go, we have to, do you have a drink or a coffee nearby? We have to do a cheers. Cheers.
I enjoyed it, everybody. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely.
Thanks for being here.
Well, thank you guys. And we will see you. Actually, this is a great time to tell you, we will not be back next Friday, right, Heather? No.
Correct.
I'm on vacation.
All right.
Yeah, a little mini vacation from work for a week, just to decompress a little bit. But we'll be back the following Friday. And our next guest is Heather.
Is Lois James with OpEx Solutions.
Fantastic. And she's going to be talking to us about
leading in the time of a crisis.
Oh, help me. Help me, child. That's going to be great. So pre-registration is required for the Casual Fridays, but you guys know we always share the video afterwards and everyone gets to watch it. These are getting a lot of views, so we appreciate you guys following along with us. And when you see this video, if it's on social media, go ahead and communicate with us there. If you've got more questions for Stephen, pop them in there, pop them in the comments and post section, and we'll make sure that he gets them and we get an answer for you. But we'd love to talk with you more about this topic there. So later today, we'll be posting it and sharing, and we'd love to hear what you guys have to say, your input and questions that you have. So thank you guys all, and we'll see you soon. Stay safe.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.